So I don't know who's listening to this. There's nobody here at this moment, but I thought I'd just touch base and talk about something that's, I think, really important that we forget about. And that there is something that happens when you're doing research that I think we forget about, and a lot of people don't really understand when they're going into it. But what you have to realize is that doing good research is a conversation. It's a discussion between people that are debating about something in this world. And you have to really view research in this sort of way in order to get it. It is very much this dialogue or discussion between people that are sort of exploring this particular phenomenon that nobody else has explored, and you're trying to carry on a conversation such that you are communicating to people that might find it interesting and framing it in such a way where people can understand what you're talking about and seeing it. Now, this sort of framing part of it, where you're trying to get the right conversation and sort of cut the edge, sort of something that happens in skating. If you've ever did any sort of ice skating, is that when you do it, um, you'll cut an edge on the skate, and when it happens, all of a sudden you can go a lot further than what you thought you could when you sort of cut that edge, when you sort of stick your skate into the ice. Now, I'm not great at it, but it's very much this sort of thing that happens when you're doing good research. When you sit there and you struggle with something and you're trying to figure out who is it that you should talk to and what is the audience that makes sense for you. This is something that I think the vast majority of really good scholars in this world struggle with, is finding that right conversation that you should talk to. And I especially struggle with this because I kind of read broadly. And as I do that, I sort of make a mistake of going too broad and talking to too many conversations or having too many conversations with different people. And so the trick is to find the right framing, the right discussion that you want to go into, and lean into that discussion and have a discussion with just a couple of people, but also show that it's a very broad discussion that lots of people can understand. So, the idea behind doing good research is to do something that is so obvious that when people see it, they're going to say it's obvious. But then when they see it and they look around, they're like, man, nobody else has done this before. I don't know why nobody else has done this before. And I struggle with why that is the case, why that happens. So actually, I missed your comment, and I'm so sorry, Mr. Blues. I just wanted to, I wanted to touch base with 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 you folks and say that it's important to have these conversations and get more into the modes. There's one thing that you tend to do early on, or I tended to do, and I think this is really like what most people tend to do, is we tend to get defensive, or we tend to, show that we're somehow smart in the way that we write about things or do things. But really, what we're trying to do is actually carry on a conversation. And once you get to that point where you're kind of relaxed and you can kind of carry on a conversation and figure out what that framing is, you can go a long ways. Because then what you're doing is you're getting other people. Here we go. To be a successful PhD student, it's important to be good at many things. Very super niche topic. Um, so what you have to do, I'll get to that in a second, Mr. Blues. So what you have to do is bring people along and have people follow along with what you're doing. And it's carrying on this conversation where you are getting people to get excited about the thing that you're doing. It's not about showing how smart you are, but it's getting people to get excited with the thing that you're working on. So, as Mr. Blues is pointing out, it's a real struggle in terms of figuring out what is the right combination of how broad you can go and how narrow you can go. But it's finding the right audience. And so for me, I think the best thing you can do is be very narrow, and then what you'll end up doing is the more narrower you get, you realize that there's so many different connections. And then you have to sort of come back and figure out what those connections are. It's hard to do, but it's very important for us to do this as we do good research in this world. So remember that as you're going forward. Remember that what we're doing is carrying on conversations. We are bringing people along in the journey. We're not fighting people, we're bringing them along, and we're trying to get them to get excited with what we're doing. So that's all I wanted to say today. And it was just nice touching base with all of you. Take care and have a wonderful